name is Jen Barb. I'm a part of the Sloan admissions team. Thanks for coming out this morning to learn a little bit more about some secret tips, not so secret maybe, but tips for the application process of the MBA program. My role within the admissions team is to oversee the evaluation group. So everyone who's involved with reading applications, conducting interviews, and helping to run the kind of final decision meeting process. And we'll kind of go through how the evaluation process works today, as well as all the different aspects of the application. And I'll try to give you some tips for how to handle all the different components of the application and sort of give you a little better understanding of how we think about the different types of data that we're looking for as we read and evaluate the different components of the app. So I also want to recognize that we have lots of virtual friends today through Zoom. For those of you who are online, please don't hesitate to type in questions through the Q&A function. I have a couple colleagues who will be responding to questions online similar to a chat, and then we'll also take questions at the end from both the room and our virtual friends through the Q&A or through the chat. Which one, Jess, should they type into? Through the...
Let's go with whichever they can see on there.
Okay, either one. Yeah. Either one will work for us. And then if any questions come up or you can't hear or you're not sure about something online, definitely type in and we'll try to make sure you have as equal access to those who are here in person. All right, so first I thought I'd just take a couple minutes and give you a quick overview of who are the students that you'll be studying alongside if you were to come here as a student at MIT Sloan. So there's some profile stats behind me. Certainly it's a diverse class with lots of different undergraduate majors represented, lots of different ethnicities and citizenships represented. Essentially half of the class in the MBA program is born outside of the United States. We have many different countries represented within those citizenships. And then, kind of the regular data in terms of average age is around 28 each year. Years of experience is about 5, GPA and GMAT score. And then this also just gives a little more breadth in terms of the distribution of where people are coming from prior to coming into Sloan. Employment backgrounds, job functions and industries. Everyone who comes here, despite kind of what you might read in Poets and Quants and other places, we're not all consultants and we're not all coming from finance. There's people from a lot of different disciplines doing interesting work in all different sectors. And then also when you're a student here, you have access to all of the amazing things that we offer throughout the MBA program. So just before we go through this, let me get kind of a show of hands. How many people here are planning to apply in a couple weeks for round 2? Great. Who here is still sort of in the early stages and looking to kind of get information for maybe next year? Okay, great. Anyone here who's planning to apply to a program besides the MBA? Okay, great. We can talk about that in a little bit as well. So here at MIT Sloan, we offer lots of different components throughout the MBA. There's a lot of different areas of focus, innovative hands-on action learning. So kind of a hallmark of the program is to offer you experiential learning through all the different classes that you take. You'll have the chance to work on the ground at different companies, whether large or small scale, to give you an opportunity to kind of put into action some of the things that you're learning in class. Certainly we have world-renowned faculty members who you'll be partnering with to learn all of the different disciplines. We're at MIT, so you have access to everything at MIT, not just at Sloan. So there's many things that students are getting involved with through the different labs and centers on campus. You can cross-register and take classes anywhere throughout MIT. Up to 3 classes outside of Sloan can count towards your MBA degree requirements. Many students get involved not only in taking academic coursework, but also in student organizations, clubs, competitions, activities, you name it. There's no shortage of things to keep you busy while you're here. Our student life team is amazing. They'll keep you busy as well when you're not in class through, again, lots of different trips and treks and opportunities to travel and get exposure to different industries. Our career office is going to partner with you from the minute you're admitted. They offer programming even in the summer before you matriculate to help you get up to speed. And then you'll be assigned to a career counselor who's dedicated to helping you kind of plan a customized approach to helping you to determine what it is you want to do. quick question, how many people here know exactly what they want to do after they complete their MBA? One or two, exactly what we would expect. Most people are coming to earn an MBA to make a pivot or to change their career path. And our team of career development advisors, as well as everyone else who's here at MIT Sloan is, our goal is to introduce you to things that you never knew existed and help give you the tools in order to achieve those. And then we certainly have a powerful network of alums, and our leadership development office, our leadership team will help partner with you to give you skills through 360 leadership programs. There's lots of different electives and immersion programs through some of the different student organizations as well. So, but without further ado, I just want to get into the application process. We'll kind of go through all the different components of the application today. We'll talk a little bit about the application deadlines and the strategy. As you know, round one has already passed. We offered admission to about half the class already. That went out in late December, and then round two's deadline is approaching on January 21st. And then we do offer a round three, but hopefully most of you are going to focus on round two, because round three, the statistics are not always in your favor if you wait longer to apply. We'll kind of go through that as well. But today, here is the components of the written application, and then I'll also give some tips for the interview process as well. But as I said, I'll kind of start with a big picture of how the evaluation process works. So first of all, every application that comes in is reviewed by a member of the admissions committee. Our admissions committee are all professionally trained members of the committee. So what we're saying with that is there's no students involved, there's no outside alums involved, it's all members of our professional admissions committee. There's around 25 people involved in evaluating applications. We meet regularly for calibration. We are a tightly knit team who are aligned on all of the different characteristics and components that we're looking at throughout the evaluation process. We call them competencies. So these competencies, they kind of fall into two different categories. And they help us to measure sort of behavioral attributes and leadership attributes, as well as academic horsepower, for lack of a better way to describe it. So our competencies are measuring things like how you work in a team. They're looking at, how do you solve problems? Are you innovative in your approach to solving problems? How do you communicate or adjust to change? How do you adapt when things don't always go as according to plan? And then how are you able to get other people to agree with the ideas that you have? Are you able to gain buy-in in some of the initiatives that you've taken either at work or through extracurricular activities? And so then these competencies we're scoring as we read applications. And we're looking for evidence throughout your different components of the application: the resume, cover letter, recommendation letter, academic background. We're looking for evidence that demonstrate to us that you have different components of these attributes. And then we categorize them, or we score them into two different buckets. So the first is called something called demonstrated success, and that's really where we're looking at your academic capabilities through test scores, through academic backgrounds, GPAs, additional courses that you've taken, and then through work experience if it's of a quantitative nature. And then we look at personal leadership attributes, and that's where we're getting into more of the meat of the specific competency-related attributes. So, how well you work in the team, like I said, how do you solve problems? How do you approach things if, things don't go according to plan? And then in a true MIT fashion, we summarize both sides of these two different categories, and we come up with two different integers, and we map them on an XY axis similar to the above. And we're looking to move the people who are in that top right quadrant forward in the process. So, as we read applications, the people who are scoring in that top right square are the ones who get invited to interview, and then we're reevaluating, or we continue to build upon these competencies through the interview process. Again, plot this again, and then those people in the top right quadrant are the ones who are offered admission. And what's really interesting for our admissions committee is to figure out where to draw those lines each time we have a decision-making point. The pool is incredibly strong, and sometimes there are people who spike in certain areas, but maybe need a little extra help in certain attributes. For instance, maybe somebody has amazing personal leadership attributes, but their test score isn't as high as we'd like, or maybe their academic background isn't as strong as we'd like. So we'll have a lot of discussions around kind of where to draw the line to figure out, who should move forward in the process. But essentially, you can think of us as sort of your advocates in the process. Give us, or help to give us, the ammunition we need to kind of feed the data to be in this top right quadrant of the grid. All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the cover letter. So the cover letter is your ability to kind of sell yourself to MIT Sloan. Why are you seeking a place in the MIT Sloan MBA program? What is it about what we have to offer that aligns with, with your reason for getting an MBA? It's really a way for you to sort of, customize for us what your background brings to our culture, our community, and how you're able to, use this experience to achieve your goal. So I have a few tips here for the cover letter. So the cover letter, like I said, is your opportunity to sell yourself to us. Why are you interested in MIT Sloan's MBA program? What is it about what we have to offer that makes it a good match for you? And then demonstrate to us through your professional successes, through your achievements, what is it about your background that helps align why MIT Sloan is a good match for you? So, as you saw before, we give you this long intro about the mission of the MIT Sloan School, and then we ask you, so basically, similar to applying for a job, why are you seeking a spot in MIT Sloan? And then demonstrate to us what about your background aligns with, what's important to us here at MIT Sloan. And then finally, it's great if you can use recent examples of achievements. So, I'd say by recent, I would mean maybe within the last year or two. So if you've graduated from undergrad 5 years ago, and in your cover letter, your biggest accomplishment is something you did sophomore year of college, that's interesting to us, but it's not as relevant today as it might have been a few years ago. So we're looking for more recent achievements that you highlight. And obviously we have your resume, which we're going to get to next. So the cover letter is really for you to sort of pull out the highlights. What is it that you don't want us to miss? We do have a resume that's more comprehensive, and we'll be able to go through that as well. Okay, the resume. So our resume, I realize we have a little bit of a unique set of instructions for our resume. It's a one-page. Try to keep it in a traditional resume format, reverse chronological order of your achievements with your education and extracurricular activities as well. We do ask you to redact your contact information, your name and your contact information from the top, and that's really for data protection purposes. So because we have this large admissions committee of about 25 people, we do a lot of calibrating, and we use resumes to help us in that calibration process, and we want to just protect your data. So we may use your resume in our training meetings, but we want to protect your contact information. So that's why we ask you to redact your information. There's no other kind of secret reason behind the scenes. We're just trying to kind of protect your information from getting exposed to too many people. So a bunch of tips here for the resume. So a resume is a way for us to measure your professional success. Pure and simple. We're looking at how have you achieved what you've achieved to date? What has been your path? Does your path make sense? Does it, is it something that, is leading us to better understand your level of achievement? Does your resume and the path of your resume align with what we see in other parts of the application? For instance, the org chart, which we can get to in a few minutes. But really, we're looking to measure your professional success in relation to your peer group. So for instance, if you started in a consulting firm right after college and you've been there for 3 years, we sort of understand the typical path. But if you were promoted a little ahead of schedule, that's interesting to us. Or, if you were jumping around from one job to another, that's completely fine. We understand there are lots of different transitions that people make, but we're looking to see professional growth and achievement with those jumps. So does your story make sense? Do all the transitions make sense here? Another tip is make your resume easy to read. There are so many different, templates out there with people having all this kind of crazy stuff on the resume. but it's harder for us to follow if it's in a format that's not traditional. So resist the urge to give me a rainbow set of colors on the resume with lots of different columns and images and icons. You know, we just want a traditional one-page resume that gives us the content in an easy to digest format. And then it's also a great opportunity for you to showcase things that you do outside of work. So if you have a leadership role in a nonprofit, or you volunteer, or you're involved in different extracurricular activities, even if it's within your job. So say you're maybe, you know, the head recruiter for your undergrad at, you know, your employer, you know, talk about those things, but maybe help pull them out in a, you know, leadership roles or extracurricular activities. We understand you're all super busy. We don't expect you to be, you know, vice president of a nonprofit on the side, but, you know, we are interested in sort of how you spend your time and how you're demonstrating the leadership skills, your intellectual curiosity, and things kind of beyond the scope of what your job description is. And then, you know, the resume is a good tool for you to help us to understand your full story. So what I mean by that is, you know, we want to be able to kind of look at it and in a quick, you know, few minutes better understand, okay, this person graduated with this degree, they went on to this position, maybe that wasn't what they wanted, so they switched to this next thing. But, you know, it should be logical, it should make sense. And if someone were to look at it and we would have a lot of questions, then that would be where you would want to use your cover letter to help us tie it all together. So it's a way for us to better understand your story. Another thing just to mention, in the different points on your resume, we're looking more for kind of quantifiable achievements and less your job description. So you might want to adjust the resume a little bit in terms of what you would use to apply for another job. You know, we're really fortunate here. We are able to read thousands of applications each year. You know, we're familiar with the paths people are on. We're pretty familiar with the different types of jobs people have. Also, in the short answer demographic information in the application, we ask you to give us a little blurb about what your job description is there. So in your resume, keep it to kind of quantifiable achievements, accomplishments, ways for us to measure your success. Okay, video statement. My favorite part of the application. I realize it creates a lot of anxiety for people, but the video statement is a great way for us to better understand sort of who you are beyond your resume. It's a great way for us to see how you communicate. It's a great way for you to demonstrate enthusiasm for MIT Sloan. We get a little better sense of your personality as well. So the video statement is pretty simple. Upload a 1-minute statement with you talking to the camera in a very simple way, explaining why you're interested in seeking a place at MIT Sloan, and introducing yourself to your kind of hypothetical future classmates. Do not worry, we will not use these videos in any other capacity, at least without asking your permission first. But tips for the video. So, you know, it's a way, like I said, for you to differentiate yourself in the application. It's a way for us to go beyond what we see on your resume or what we see on a LinkedIn profile. You know, tell us about what's important to you and why. If you were at, you know, a cocktail reception for your undergrad, maybe you were at a networking event like Young Professionals in Boston, or, you know, whatever school you graduated from, and you walked up to a table and you said, oh, hi, you know, I'm Jen, I work here, I graduated this year, these are some of the things I'm interested in, or this is where I live, or this is how I spent my morning. You know, give us a little bit more insight into who you are beyond what your resume says. And then finally, keep it simple. So it's sort of a theme you'll hear throughout the application, but we get lots of videos, and, you know, sometimes there's too much editing, or there's too much background noise, or, you know, there's like balloons with word blurbs coming across the screen. It's really intended to be like a selfie video. My biggest tip is make sure that we can hear you. So that means maybe wear a microphone to make sure we hear you. A lot of people pick an interesting background, but it might be noisy, so sometimes it's hard for us to hear you. That's the most important thing. Make sure we can hear you in the video and that it comes off clearly. Use your best judgment. So it is a professional business school application. You do not need to be wearing a suit, but, you know, take into account sort of what your surroundings are, what you look like, what the background looks like. You know, it is something that a number of people on the admissions committee will see. And then that kind of goes along with be aware of your surroundings, trying to avoid mountains of dirty laundry in the background. So any questions about the video? Because I know this is kind of a hot topic. All right, well, you think about it and we'll come back to it if you have more questions. All right, so recommendation letter. So this year we went down to just one letter of recommendation. And this letter should come from ideally a current supervisor or former supervisor, maybe your previous supervisor, someone who knows you well, someone who can speak in detail to the answers of the questions or the prompts that we have on the form. You know, it's great when they can give us examples that sort of align with other parts of the application, but go into more detail. We're interested in how you know this person. Like I said, I know there's always an exception to the rule, but ideally it's somebody who is your direct manager. And so, you know, choose people who know you really well. It does not need to be the CEO of the company. It does not matter to us what the title of the person is, as long as that person ranks higher than you in your organization. So it should not be from a peer, but it should be someone, you know, who can speak in a supervisory role to the different aspects of your work experience. Obviously, you should not write the letter for them, but, you know, with that being said, it's important to talk to your recommender, take them for coffee, explain why you're applying to MIT Sloan, what is it about our MBA program that makes it a good match. It's always great if your recommender can include something at the end just to kind of tie it all together for, you know, why what we have to offer here is a good match for, you know, the goals or the type of candidate that you are. Just remember that the letters are due on the same date, January 21st, as your application. So we have lots of people who email us and say, my recommender is going to be late, what's going to happen? You know, there's maybe a grace period of like 24 hours, but beyond that, we have to keep the ball rolling, and we're reading applications immediately after the deadline. So we're not going to be able to go backwards. If your letters aren't complete or your application is not complete, we're not going to go back once it does become complete. So it's in your best interest to have it all completed on time, and then the online system lets you check the status of it, you know, periodically. So you can have automated emails sent as reminders to your recommender as well. And then we have realized that sometimes some of the corporate servers that you might be giving us email addresses for your recommenders are putting our auto emails in junk folders or spam folders. So just confirm with your recommenders that they received it. And then if you have any issues or any questions that you have, you can always email our app support. Okay, we have also added this year additional references. So in addition to your letter of recommendation, we ask you to give us 2 additional references that we may contact should we have additional questions. So these are people similar to if you were applying for a job, who would your list of references be? You know, we've contacted a couple people through round 1, not too many, but the reference is really, should we have additional questions about this person? You know, who are the people that you would recommend that we reach out to? So what's interesting to us that we've kind of realized through reading round 1 is we're interested to see who these people are and how you know them. So is it another former supervisor, or is it someone from undergrad, or is it a peer? You know, it would be ideal for us to have a list of people who are in a similar capacity to your recommender. So people who rank a little, you know, more senior to you, people who could speak to your professional background, people maybe who could speak to a leadership role or an experience that you've dedicated significant time to outside of work. And then how do you know that person? So all of these, you know, kind of short answer questions are included in the application when you give us their contact information. Rest assured, though, if we are going to reach out to them, we will have a realistic expectation of our response time. So, you know, there'll probably only be a handful of us who would reach out to them. It would probably be somewhere between making decisions of who to invite for interview or making decisions about who to admit to the program. If we do have additional questions, I would usually email your reference and say, are you available to chat in the next few days? What's a good time for you? And then it would be like a 10-minute phone call. The nature of the questions would be very similar to what we ask on the recommendation letter. All right, org chart. So this is another great tool. I really like looking at people's organizational charts. So it's a great way for us to better understand sort of the scope of responsibility that you have at work and who you work with outside of your individual group. So there's lots of different ways that you can put together an organizational chart. You know, a few sort of tips beyond what's on the screen. First of all, you do not need to include the contact name or the specific names of everybody in your organization. Feel free to just use initials, feel free to just use job titles. We're not looking for the names of people, but we're looking to see sort of where you sit within sort of the entire organization and who you have access to. So we love the dotted lines. You know, we're looking to see sort of where you have influence within the greater organization. And so there's a bunch of examples of org charts that we've built into the application to help give you a sense of if you're a consultant. For instance, we'd love to see an organizational chart of a recent project or your current project, and not necessarily the org chart of business analysts at McKinsey. Or if you've made a couple transitions recently, maybe you just switched roles within the past few months, we're actually you're able to upload 2 pages here. So you could upload your org chart from the past and then your org chart from your new organization. So it's a great tool for us to better understand who you're working alongside, who you have access to. We're not necessarily interested in how many direct reports you have. In fact, we don't expect you to have any at all. It's more about sort of who are the dotted lines, and like I said here, who's your kind of sphere of influence. We are asking, so this is something that a lot of applicants miss, so pay attention to this one. We'd like for you to highlight for us who you are on the org chart, make it easy for us to read. A color code is good, a little key is good. You know, so, you know, if you put, you know, who you are on the org chart in blue, that helps us to kind of see quickly where you are, and then highlight for us who your references are and who your recommendation letter is coming from. So we have a better sense of kind of where to look and where the lines go. Some org charts can be really cumbersome. There's a lot of different pieces. Make it easy for us to understand. And then, you know, we're interested in your career path. So I understand that this might not apply to everybody, but for someone who's been at the same organization for 5 years, we're looking at where your previous job was. We'll see that on your resume or in your employment data, and then we'll look to see, okay, where does that sit in relation to where you are now on the org chart? So we're just looking to see how you've been able to grow. All right. Academic records and additional coursework. So here we ask you to upload, obviously, all of the transcripts that you have that relate to your undergraduate degree. Should you have additional master's degrees or you've taken additional coursework, we want to see all of it. Anything that's relevant to business school. So for instance, a lot of people have taken like edX classes or Coursera classes on like computer science classes, coding, or maybe they've gone on to get a CFA or CPA. We're looking for lots of data here to support your academic capabilities. So all transcripts should be uploaded. If your transcripts are in a different language, include the translation. If there's some people don't always have grades that relate to their courses, that's fine. Upload every page of your transcript. Try not to prevent us from having to go back to you to ask questions. We do look in detail at the transcripts. Again, we're looking for evidence of academic capability. And then in addition to the transcripts, these kind of go hand in hand. In addition to academic background, we're looking at test scores for the same type of evidence. So you can take the GMAT or the GRE. It does not matter to us at all which exam you use. And we are looking at, you know, your quant score and your verbal score, the breakdown of that. If you've taken the test multiple times, feel free to upload or include as many tests as many times as you'd like to share with us. We only see what you give us, so we're not looking in the back end to pull more data. But for instance, we see a lot of people who do really well, maybe in quant early on, but then their total score maybe goes down on the second time because they're trying to get a more balanced score. We are looking at the breakdown of quant and verbal, so feel free to include as many tests as you'd like. And then again, GMAT or GRE, we have zero preference. We've been taking the GRE forever, so we're pretty familiar with both exams. And then together, academic background and test scores help us to better understand, like I said, your academic aptitude. So regardless of you know, what your career goals are, you are coming to study at MIT. we are going to stretch you in terms of your quantitative abilities. The core curriculum is real, and we want to make sure that the people who are coming into our MBA program are comfortable with quant. Now, that being said, there are many people we admit to the program who have not taken a math class since high school, and we will help to support you. In fact, some students, we ask you to take additional courses before matriculating to prepare. So it's not a reason for us not to admit you if you don't have a lot of quantitative exposure, but we want to get a better understanding of where your skills are today so that we can help you to succeed once you arrive. And then again, so through the coursework and through your test scores, more specifically through coursework, we're interested in your sense of intellectual curiosity. So, did you go outside and take a bunch of electives in different areas? How willing were you to kind of embrace the unknown and try new things? All right, so that kind of wraps it up for the written components of the application. If you are invited to interview, you'll also be asked to answer an additional short answer question before your interview. So we call it the interviewee essay. It's basically asking you to describe how you in the past have supported an inclusive, diverse environment. And give us examples from your past, and then maybe relate that a little bit to some of the things you might be interested in getting involved with here at Sloan. So not everyone will be asked to do this. Again, only if you're invited to interview. You may only get like a week's notice to do this essay or to do this short answer question. It's due 24 hours prior to the start of your interview. So if I'm your interviewer, I don't usually prep my interviews until the day before or that day. So we just want to make sure that the data is there so I can read it and be prepared to ask questions about it should I have any in preparation for the interview. It's often a good starting out point for the interview. It's something that almost all of us touch on briefly during the interview. So and then it's a great way for us to sort of emphasize that we do have a diverse community here, and we're looking for people who embrace diversity and working with people who are different from themselves. All right. So interview tips. So again, early on I explained how the process works. So every application that comes in is read and reviewed by members of the admissions committee. Those initial reviews determine sort of a numeric way that we determine who to invite to interview. So if you're invited to interview, it means you've made it to an advanced stage in the application process. We're typically interviewing between 25 and 35% of the applicant pool. And so interview invitations, the dates will be included in your email confirmation when you submit your application. I don't have the date offhand, but there's 2 different dates that we'll send invites out. They're both going to be in February. So one's probably mid-February and then the end of February. And then we just send interview invitations based on our travel schedule. So we travel to about 15 different hub cities to conduct interviews. Our goal is to meet you face-to-face. In the application, we ask you to rank order your top 3 choices for that location. And then we try to invite you to the closest place where we'll be. So the applicant pool kind of determines where we go to interview. And it all works out. You can always come to campus to interview. If you're in a remote part of the world and you're not able to get to us in person within the window that we've given, then we'll arrange for a Skype interview. But our preference is to have a face-to-face interview, and we have a team of about 12 people who are on the road making this happen. All of the interviews for round 2 are going to take place in March, so it'll be, I think it's March 1st through around the 25th of March. So those 3.5 weeks or so are the full interview window for round 2. So make sure that when you rank order those choices, those are the locations you'll be in during the month of March. We try to give you at least 7 days notice for the interview. So interview invites go out, like I said, kind of based on our travel schedule. So we'll make sure we give you notice. And within that window, we need you to fly and meet us wherever we are and also complete the interviewee essay. Interviews last around 30 minutes. Some are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. It varies a little bit, but overall you can plan for a 30-minute interview. Interviews take place with members of the admissions committee, so professional members of the admissions committee. Not everyone who's interviewing sits on the admissions team. We have some colleagues from other departments that work with us during the interview process. They also sit on the admissions committee. But you're going to meet with someone who has read your application, who's very familiar with your background. The interview is a behavioral set of questions. So tell me about a time when you did something, and then based on your answer, I'll have some follow-up questions for you. If I were to interview you, I'd probably come in with 3 or 4 questions prepared based on areas I still had questions about. We may only get to 2 of the questions because maybe you'll have a great story and I can get all of the data I need from follow-up questions. So between 2 to 4 questions you're usually asked. And then at the beginning, I always ask, is there anything new, any changes, anything I need to be aware of? So if there is, that's your time to share. Sometimes people are recently promoted, or they made a career transition, or they got tapped to have some type of new leadership role. That's always good for us to hear. And then at the end, I will always ask, so why are you interested in pursuing an MBA at MIT Sloan? And again, that's your chance a second time to sell yourself to us. So be prepared to answer why MIT Sloan, why MBA, what is it about our way of offering the MBA program that makes it a good match for you. And then I always leave time for questions. So any questions that you have about the program, about the experience, about students. If I can't answer your question, I'll get back to you over email if I'm not prepared to answer right away. But try to come prepared with questions that are, questions that are thoughtful, that, or maybe questions that you couldn't easily answer on the website. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers the interview. Interviews are my favorite part of the process. It's a great way for us to kind of learn a lot more about many different backgrounds and ask questions. Sometimes an interview is going to feel different than what we described to you, but everyone who applies has a different background. So, for me, sometimes if I'm interviewing someone and I'm not as familiar with their career path or their job today, I might spend 10 minutes trying to dig in to better understand the nature of their work so that I can better assess sort of how they've had success doing that. And then there might only be a couple behavioral questions. There's lots of different speculation out there about how interviews are conducted and the type of questions that we ask. There is some variability in the interview process, but essentially, the core set of competencies are trying to be assessed through behavioral questions in the interview. All right, so then general application tips, and then we'll get to lots of questions. So we are looking for reasons to admit you throughout this whole process. Our job is to admit people. We work in admission. So help us to have the ammunition we need in order to do that. If possible, apply early. So what I mean by that is apply in round 2 versus round 3. So right now, half the seats in the class have already been awarded. So we have half the class still open. So that's, we are looking to seat a total class of around 355 MBAs. Half of those seats have already been made offers to. So the longer you wait, the less seats there are available. So if you apply in round 3, amazing applications have a hard time getting in round 3 just because we don't have that many seats still open in the class. Be sure, obviously, to follow the directions. So, we ask for the resume in a specific format. We ask for the video in a specific format. We ask for the cover letter, etc., all for reasons that help to support our model of evaluation. So, the easier you make it for us, the easier it is for us to dig in and find the different data points that relate to the competencies we're looking for. Obviously, try to be yourself. There's lots of people out there helping to coach you. I understand it's important for you to get feedback on your application, making sure that it makes sense. But the person I meet in the interview should be the same person I see in the video. It should be the same person who's telling me the same types of stories, the same level of confidence, the same communication skills. We're looking for a genuine take on who you are today and why you're interested in us. And then finally, think of us as your advocate. Like I said before, it's our job to admit you. But we're here to help you in the process. And even if you have questions today, obviously we're going to get to questions in a second. Think of us as kind of your partner and your advocate in the process. All right, who has questions, online or in person? Yeah.
for example, like I'm studying engineering, so I'm guessing a lot of people from engineering background that don't have like the coursework related to business as much. So what recommendations do you have?
You do not need to have any coursework related to business at all.
Okay.
That's not, so engineering coursework is fine. Whatever it is you've been doing is fine. We're looking for success in whatever it is that you've been doing. Yeah.
So right after I graduated undergrad, I enrolled in the PhD program, decided it wasn't for me, dropped out.
Okay.
What's the best way to put that on the application? Is that something you want to see? Is that something?
Yeah, I would have a question about that if I saw transcripts that didn't lead to a degree. So talk about it in your cover letter, or you can describe it in the academic section. There's an optional text box that tells us any extenuating circumstances that relate to your academic background. You can mention it there.
Sure.
Yep. So the admissions committee is creative. We read thousands of applications, and don't lead us to make assumptions about things without giving us all the information. So if there's red flags or if there's something that we don't understand, we might not interpret it the right way. So don't leave any extra room for interpretation. Yeah, right here.
Super technical question for the redaction of the name on the resume. Do you prefer folks just not include that information or include it and do a black highlight?
It totally does not matter. Whatever is comfortable for you. Okay. Questions online?
Yes. So one is an LGO question. If you apply for LGO and you don't get in, are you automatically considered for the MBA, or do you need to reapply?
Yep. So LGO is our Leaders for Global Operation program. It's our joint degree with engineering. I didn't really talk about it today because the deadlines for LGO have already passed for this year. The deadline for LGO was back in December. But if you are an applicant out there who applied to LGO, if you're not admitted to LGO, you are automatically considered for just the MBA in the round 2 MBA pool. LGO will send you updated decisions related to that according to their schedule, but you do get rolled into the round 2 MBA pool. More questions in the room? Yeah.
In the application says to only list 3 employments, but I think technically you're allowed to, like, the system allows to add more than 3. So I just wanted to confirm that you'll only be reading 3 if we.
Yeah, so just to include, so in the employment section, so this is sort of all the demographic data we ask about in the employment section, we ask you to include your last 3 employers. There's some questions related to that. So we ask you for the website of your employer, the size of the organization, what your job description was, and what the company does. You only need to include 3 there, but include everything on your resume. Yeah. Yep.
For the org chart, if I had a role where basically there's leadership that would not be represented within my particular branch, like I had a team of team members in different areas, would it be appropriate on the org chart to indicate that in some way? Like they weren't my direct reports, but I was in a leadership role.
Yes, you can be creative with the org chart. It does not have to be your like formal organizational chart. Be creative, help us better interpret what you're trying to tell us.
Awesome.
Yes. We're online?
Yeah. Who can write a letter of recommendation for an applicant working in his family business?
So if you're working in a family business, you could always use like a professional advisor or someone, if there's a board of directors. I would definitely avoid having a family member write a letter. But anyone who's maybe like a professional advisor or accountant, tax advisor, a mentor maybe from a previous role, possibly a client, they have to kind of use their best judgment. Yeah.
I want to just add on to the question that one of my friends just asked about the org chart.
Okay.
So for me as well, like if I'm working with external stakeholders, and there are a lot of people from other categories that I want to add. So would a number do, or do I have to show it in a circle, or how do I do that?
I guess it doesn't really matter to me as long as it's easy for me to understand what you're trying to say. Like I said, I guess it's up to you. It depends on how big the scale is. Make it easier to digest. Yeah. Yeah, right here.
For the GPA, is that something that you guys calculate based on looking at the transcript? And what if your undergrad only did A, B, C, no credit, and no half grades?
Yeah. So we ask you to include for us what your class rank is. We ask you to include whatever is represented on your transcript. If you do not have a GPA from your graduating institution, then you don't have to include anything. But we do ask for you to include like what the scale is. So some people not everyone uses a 4.0 scale, for instance. You know, I've worked in admissions for almost 20 years. I've looked at lots of different transcripts. We are going to dig into the transcript, so don't stress about the converted GPA. You know, we understand the nuance of lots of different degrees. Yeah.
So I'm an MD, and I'm just curious, how would you enter, as you said, I haven't had a math class since high school.
Yeah.
It's not part of my daily job. So how would you interpret my GRE scores in that regard?
Well, your GRE scores, we're still going to look at what your raw scores are for quant and verbal. We want to make sure that the people we admit to the program are quantitatively strong enough, but you certainly have a scientific background, so typically there aren't many issues with people coming from more of a biological or science background.
I worked for a company that got acquired about halfway through the time that I was there. Should
Yep.
I identify that both in the resume and also in the work history?
Yes. So something I didn't talk about, which I'll highlight, this is a good point. We do a background check on everybody once you're admitted. So you want to make sure that what you include in your resume and what you include in those demographic employment questions all tie together and they all align. Because if there's anything that comes up in that background check, you know, a lot of times it's not a big deal, but you want to be consistent in how you describe everything. So lots of people have worked at companies that were acquired, and you could just include that in parentheses next to, you know, the employer that you include, or if you had different positions within it. So you can include the name. I would be very specific. So if the company's name was one thing during the time you were, you know, a coordinator, and then a different thing during the time that you were an assistant director, then you would want to make sure that you include the appropriate title of the company, but maybe include in parentheses what it used to be called.
Right, so 2 separate sections.
2 separate sections, yeah. Yeah.
I guess if you did an externship and then the company was restructured post that time, but you had a direct supervisor and their role sort of changed, do you do the org chart from when you were there during the externship, or do you do it post from when you apply?
So maybe include 2. You can include up to 2 pages on the org chart. You know, it depends on how long you were at the company before the change and then how long you've been at the company since the change. But if it's significant, you can include 2 versions of it and just include a date range. Yeah. Online. We'll get to you in 1 second. We'll take some online.
I can do another one. So someone said, it seems like the application is designed for people working in traditional corporate positions. How can an entrepreneur shine?
Yeah, we love entrepreneurs. I hate when people say that. We're looking for evidence of success in whatever it is that you've been doing. So if you're an entrepreneur, help us to understand what you've been dedicating your time doing, the scale and the scope, the number of investors, you know, what your annual revenue is, the different types of research or, you know, external stakeholders who have been a part of whatever your startup is. So even if your startup was not a success, it's okay. You know, you learn from that. It's all about how they kind of tie their story together and explain things to us. You know, MIT is the home of innovation. There are so many entrepreneurs here. It's kind of contagious in the air. If you're not interested in being an entrepreneur, it's hard to resist getting caught up in the startup space once you get here. So entrepreneurs should not be nervous about that. Up here, yep.
So I have a question about the interview.
Yep.
So I would assume that you would mention some of your biggest achievements or essays, right? And you mentioned that during the interview, the applicant member read through your whole package. So say, for example, if you got asked in an interview, tell me about your biggest achievement. And you already talked about it in great length in your essay. So I guess my question for you is there any advice for how to best navigate ourselves during interview preparation so that we could have a better result?
Yeah, I won't ask you that question in the interview because we know we've already asked you it once and essentially in the cover letter. I may ask you about, tell me about something you worked on recently that you feel went really well. So I'm looking for more, I mean, I'll ask you sort of a simple question to get you talking at the beginning, a recent professional accomplishment or something you've worked on that went well, or I think that, like I said, there's a little variability with the interview because everyone's written application provides us with a little bit of a different subset of data, and we only have 30 minutes to get the additional data points we need to support your admission. So we're trying to piece things together, but it's not a simple equation for everyone. But that being said, to prepare for the interview, it's okay to say, should you be asked, tell me about your biggest achievement. You can say, well, I already mentioned this in the cover letter, but to build on that, and you can talk about it a little bit. But our team of interviewers is not going to spend a lot of time focusing on something that you already wrote about in the application because we already have that information. We're going to try to dig to find new examples of things.
Yeah, I have a question, please.
Yeah.
What if you have a title, maybe like a system supervisor, but then you have nobody reporting to you? How do you present that?
Sorry, I want to make sure I understand. Can you repeat?
Yeah, you have a title, like
systems administrator.
But you have nobody reporting to you. You do everything.
Yep.
But then you just have the title, system supervisor title.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We don't expect for you to have any direct reports. We're looking for you to better explain to us what the nature of your job is, but in the organizational chart, we're looking at who are you working alongside, who are your peers, who are the other groups that you might have dotted lines to. Don't worry about not having any direct reports. That's not something that we require at all.
But then you look at the people's management skills. When you look at somebody who has a title of supervisor, but then has not demonstrated that he's capable of managing people.
Well, it depends. So that's, if you have a supervisor title, then I guess we would expect for you to be supervising something.
Exactly.
But there's always maybe an exception to that, so you would need to give us the context of that in the application, and then hopefully your reference or your letter of recommendation would help us to better understand the story as well. Yeah, more online? Sure.
So for universities that don't include a GPA, is there a specific way that we prefer students calculate GPA?
No, however you want. The instructions are in the academic section. So just report as your transcript reads. You have a question up here?
Yeah, I did, about the cover letter. So I know with the resume, there's pretty specific guidelines as to how that's to be formatted. For the cover letter, it's 300 words or less. How stringent are you on the 300 words? Is there flexibility there?
So the 300 words I know takes up about 3/4 of a page in regular font and regular spacing. If I get a 2-page letter, I know that they've kind of gone a little overboard. I don't have a word count at the bottom, so if it's 320 words, it's not that big of a deal. But we're trying to keep it within a page. Yeah.
Do we want to avoid referring to parts of your application and other parts of your application? For example, if the resume is redacted, do you want to avoid referring to your resume in your cover letter?
No, not at all.
Okay.
You can do that. We have the whole thing. Yep.
Wait, so building on that question, what if we repeat something within the video that we've kind of covered a little bit in the cover letter?
Great. It's about how you tie your story together. So you can think about your cover letter is summarizing for us why MIT Sloan, your resume is summarizing for us your professional success, and your video is sort of your personal side. So the combination of those 3 things is sort of telling us your story. But obviously they're going to tie together and have some repetitive things. Online? More online?
Okay, what would be a good example of someone with demonstrated success in personal leadership?
Well, a good example of someone with both would be someone who's in the class. So you can check the kind of class profiles that are on the website, but people who have academic horsepower. So they've done well academically at whatever it is that they've been pursuing, and then they've also done well professionally in terms of promotions according to schedule. They've shown intellectual curiosity with the things that they've been involved with. And then, what they're trying to accomplish with an MBA is sort of demonstrated to us and why MIT Sloan is a good match. Any more questions? Yeah.
I know that for the application package, essay-wise, LGO is very different than standard Sloan. So I'm just wondering, what about the interview part?
For LGO.
And Sloan.
Yeah, so if you apply to LGO, that's joint degree with engineering, the interview is exactly the same as an MBA interview. So the LGO interview is essentially an MBA interview with just one extra question at the end, which is more like why LGO versus why MBA. The difference in the engineering, in the LGO additional essays and additional letter of recommendation is so that the Department of Engineering that you're also applying to has the information that they need. So it's not that different. Are you a current LGO applicant right now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm happy to chat one-on-one after if you have more questions, but it's an MBA interview. It's an interview.
Interviewer-wise would be the same, would be someone from Sloan, right?
Correct, yeah. Okay, maybe we'll take one more question if there is one before we wrap up. Yeah.
So for resume, for example, like when it gets technical resumes, a lot of the a lot of the bullet points in it would be like just very technical and may not like be related to management. Would you prefer like having bullet points related to management? Or
your resume does not have to be related to management, but it has to be written in a way that I understand and I'm not a technical person. So, avoid lots of jargon or acronyms, but it's fine if you're talking about, building technical solutions to solve problems. I mean, I'm hypothesizing, I don't exactly know what you do, but try to just make sure that it's something that is understood by anybody, not just someone from a technical space. All right, so I'm happy to stick around if you have any other questions, but just remember, you guys are really well prepared. You've got this. We're looking forward to admitting you. Think of us as your advocate in the process. We're here to help. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us. This email address, the website, obviously we'll stick around and chat one-on-one. The deadline's not for another 2 weeks or so, or a week and a half, so you have plenty of time to ask questions. We're really looking forward to getting to know you better throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.